Forum and just talk about us and get policies about us. You have to come and speak to us, right? You have to come to the shacks. You have to come and live in the shacks if you want. If you want to go and live in the shacks, they will find you a place for you to come and stay and see how it is to live in the shacks. Experience what, in fact, their life is like. They had got kind of sick of being told, oh, come to this meeting, and in the town council and everything will be worked out. So in other words, they kind of broke with the system, right? They broke with the political system in a certain sense, and this ostracized them outside of that, democratically elected political system. Interestingly, the ANC had always used that kind of ethnic card, that race card. They'd always seen the shack dwellers as the ways in which they could get re-elected, and they always felt the Indian population was problematic. The Indian population might vote for the Democratic Alliance or some other organization. They weren't necessarily people that would vote for the ANC. What the shack dwellers did is they had an enormous demonstration, about 6,000 people, and they decided to bury the councillor. They took a coffin, they brought him to the council's office, and they buried him. In other words, they had the coffin, they made a statement saying, the council's dead to us. We no longer are represented by you, we are representing ourselves. So the ANC shifted. In other words, what they did now is then they started talking to the people in the Indian community, the Indian middle class, about these terrible shacks. It's about housing prices and keeping, all the kind of concerns of the middle class because they're living right next to the shack settlements. So at the same time, this demonstration produced something else that I think was fascinating in the sense that they held up these banners. By the way, it's right next to the University of KwaZulu-Natal, one of the elite universities in South Africa. In other words, you have Cape Town, Wits in Johannesburg, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and maybe Graham's University of Rhodes. So in other words, 3 or 4 elite universities. And the shack dwellers, some of the shacks are on the University of KwaZulu-Natal, so they have a kind of personal relationship with the university, although they never go there. They might clean there, but they never talk in the public space of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Nevertheless, there had been this thinking going on in the communities, and that's what I kind of want to emphasize. Thinking in the communities. That's what the Abahlali think is so important to their organizations, their democratic structure and so forth. Their own thinking that's getting done in the communities, and that's what they want, and that's why they want you to talk with them, not about them, right? Because they can think, the poor can think, and this is what they keep on emphasizing. On these banners that they had on this demonstration, homemade banners, none brought in by any organizations, made in the shacks, made very cheaply, hand-painted and so forth. It said, the University of Kennedy Road. In other words, they're saying that their lived experience itself, right? This is self-consciously saying, the lived experience of thinking in the communities and thinking through that was itself a university education. And that was something that challenged, the elite conceptions, right, of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and they were able then to try to make connections to critics within the University of KwaZulu-Natal, then to be able to talk to intellectuals, but also criticize intellectuals for not really coming to talk with them. And this is where it became kind of interesting that they basically immediately, they came to you, and they basically said, you talk about the poor, how many taps do you have? Right, so it became a moral issue, right? You have 6 taps. How many taps do you have in your apartment? Count them, right? I'm sure you've got 6, 8 taps, right? Maybe 10, I don't know. But the thing is, they're talking about 6, 8 taps for 6,000 people, right? In other words, standing online to get, so this is a moral critique of your kind of, not just of your class position, but of a kind of conception, right? Of what it was to think about, post-apartheid South Africa. In other words, this whole struggle had been made for a new society, right? And 10, 12 years later, nothing had really changed for them. So it wasn't kind of just it wasn't out of the blue that one could have a kind of a moral critique, because there had been a collective struggle, against apartheid. And what was the content of that struggle? So in a certain way, the shack dwellers, I can talk about one particular case, but they were making universal sorts of arguments about human life, about the value of human life, about what it is to live in these conditions, about how they are sort of outside of, considered outside, the detritus, right? The poor, the detritus, the worthless people, right? But in a certain sense, in the same way as coming 40 years after Fanon wrote Wretched of the Earth, there's a certain maturity of the age that, now shack dwellers can ask these, absolutely universal in a certain way, for me anyway, in terms of Africa and African crisis, ask these universal human questions.
Excellent, Judith.
Okay. Are we going to do a third still?